Regretful millionaire asks nurse for help, family secrets and tears of reunion that make everyone ponder. Have you ever regretted not saying sorry on time? Have you ever thought, if time turned back, would things be different? This is the story of a powerful, wealthy man, but is paying a heavy price for past mistakes. Does he have enough time to correct his mistakes, or is it too late? Watch until the end, and you will see that it is not money, but love and forgiveness that saves everything. In a hospital room on the 20th floor of a skyscraper in New York, the space was so quiet that it was scary. Only the beep, beep sound of the heart rate monitor rang out steadily, as if counting down the last moments of a life. Outside, the city was still bustling, neon lights illuminating the night sky. But inside the room, Edward Scott, the man who once dominated Chicago's textile industry, was now only a pale shadow of himself. His body was thin, his eyes were deep as if they contained the whole gloomy sky. Edward lay there, eyes glued to the white ceiling, his mind haunted by indelible memories. Memories of his daughter Penelope, the only child he loved but whom he pushed away. Every day's arguments are like sharp blades cutting deep into my mind. Edward closed his eyes, trying to block out the sounds echoing in his head. But the sound of Penelope's door slamming that day still rang out clearly, as if it had just happened. "I don't want to see Dad anymore." Those were her last words before disappearing from his life. 7 years. For 7 long years, he waited, hoping she would return. But no. The illness is now like a sentence, forcing him to face the fact that he has lost everything. If I had apologized sooner, would things have been different? Edward wondered, but the answer was only silence. The soft sound of the door opening brought Edward back to reality. Brooke Sanders, a young nurse with neatly tied red-brown hair and gentle eyes, entered. "Mr. Scott, you seem thoughtful today," she said, her voice soft but warm. Edward nodded slightly, but did not respond. There was something about Brooke that made him feel more comfortable, not because she was a nurse, but because she really listened, really cared. "Is there anything you want to share?" Brooke sat down by the bed, her eyes filled with sincerity. Edward hesitated, but finally spoke, his voice cracking and hoarse. "Penelope. My daughter. I haven't seen her, 7 years." Brooke nodded, without interrupting, letting him continue. "I tried calling, sending letters, but there was no response. I hurt her, and now I don't have time to fix it." Edward paused, his eyes shining with a faint glimmer of hope. He turned to Brooke, his voice trembling. "Can you help me? Can you pretend to be my daughter, just for one day? So I can say what I haven't said yet?" Brooke's eyes widened in surprise. She didn't answer right away, just looked at him, trying to understand the weight of this request. Inside, she struggled with herself. Is this the right thing to do? Would it really help him, or would it just make the pain worse? What do you think about this request? If you were Brooke, would you agree? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Brooke agrees. "Okay, but just this once," she said, her voice serious but sympathetic. Edward looked at her, his old eyes suddenly shining with hope. Both of them prepared for this acting. Brooke wore the light blue shirt that Penelope once liked, and tied her hair up like the image Edward always remembered of his daughter. When she entered the room, Edward no longer saw a nurse. He saw Penelope, his little daughter, who used to run around in the old house with a bright smile. "Hello, Penelope," Edward said, his voice choking. Brooke smiled and replied in a warm voice, "Dad, how are you feeling today?" The space in the hospital room seemed to settle. Edward held Brooke's hand, his eyes filled with regret and joy at seeing his daughter again, even if only in an illusion. But will this reunion really bring peace to Edward, or will it only make him more tormented? Have you ever thought that just one phone call could change a life? Edward had a faint hope that he could make things right, but would that be enough to heal old wounds? We will follow the next developments, where the past and present intertwine, and a dark conspiracy is gradually revealed. After playing Edward's daughter, Brooke realized that he needed more than just a little temporary peace. He really needed Penelope. She decided to find a way to contact Penelope, despite the complicated feelings in her heart. At the desk in the nurse's office, Brooke opened Edward's medical records, finding contact information for the only next of kin listed under next of kin. The only phone number that belongs to Penelope. Brooke picked up the phone, her mind confused with a series of thoughts. Will she answer the phone? What if she refuses? If she's still angry, am I making things worse? Brooke took a deep breath, then dialed the number. The phone rings. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. After a moment, Penelope's voice rang out, dry and cold. Hello, who is it? Brooke took a breath to calm herself. Hello Miss Penelope, I'm Brooke, the nurse taking care of your father, Edward Scott. The other side was silent for a long while. What does he want? Penelope asked, her voice mixed with disgust and pain. He doesn't have much time left, Brooke said, trying to keep her voice soft. He's very sorry for hurting you, and he wants to see you one last time. Penelope sighed, a long, drawn-out sound that seemed to suppress her emotions. I don't know if I want to see him again. What he did is not easy to forgive. Brooke sensed the struggle in Penelope's voice. She lowered her voice, almost whispering, Penelope, I can't speak for your father, but I saw the pain in his eyes every day. I think he just wanted a chance to say he was sorry, error. On the other side of the phone, Penelope did not answer immediately. But Brooke heard a choking breath, a sign that the emotional wall was slowly breaking down. Okay, Penelope said at last, her voice shaking. I'll think about it. When Brooke told Edward that Penelope was considering visiting, his eyes lit up with the first light in years. Will she come? He asked, his voice filled with anticipation. Brooke smiled gently. I can't be sure, but she said she would think about it. That's a start, right? Edward nodded, but his trembling hands clutched the blanket tightly, as if afraid that this hope would disappear. I just want to see her once, tell her I'm sorry. Even just once. While Edward waits, another character enters the story, Patricia, his cold wife. The hospital room door opened with a bang clack full of determination. Patricia walked in, her high heels clicking on the floor, each step exuding complacency. Oh, this is such a touching sight, she said, her voice filled with sarcasm as she saw Edward lying weakly on the bed. Edward squinted his eyes, trying to sit up. What are you doing here, Patricia? Patricia smirked, her designer bag sparkling under the light. I just want to make sure everything is in order. You know, the will. Edward tightened his grip on the edge of the bed. You only care about money. I'm not surprised. Patricia shrugged, her expression unrepentant. You don't think I've been here all these years out of love, do you? I just did what was necessary to protect my interests. Brooke stood outside the door, eavesdropping on the conversation and felt her blood boil. She decides not to interfere, but vows to do everything she can to protect Edward. After Patricia left, Brooke entered the room and saw Edward sitting motionless, his eyes filled with disappointment and anger. Brooke, he said, his voice low, I think Patricia is planning to take over all my assets. I need you to help me find a lawyer. I can't let her win. The next evening, as the city lights began to glow, Brooke received a call. It's Penelope. I'll come, she said shortly. Brooke told Edward the good news, and for the first time, he truly smiled. Thank you, he whispered, closing his eyes as if to hold on to this fragile joy. The day Penelope arrived, the atmosphere in the hospital room became more tense than ever. Brooke stood next to Edward, trying to stay calm. The door opened, and Penelope entered. Her eyes met Edward's, and time seemed to stop. Dad, she said, her voice choked up. Edward looked at her, tears rolling down his thin face. Daddy's daughter. Penelope finally entered the room where the father she once hated was lying waiting. But will this reunion bring forgiveness, or is it just the beginning of a series of secrets and conspiracies being exposed? Stay tuned, because what's about to happen will completely change their lives. Penelope stood in the doorway, her eyes staring at the man in the bed, the man who was once a symbol of power, now only a pale shadow. Edward looked at his daughter, tears welling up in his eyes, as if he were seeing a miracle. "My daughter," he whispered, his voice breaking. Penelope stood motionless, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Father." She choked on her words, but the pain and anger in her voice could not be hidden. Edward reached towards her, his hands shaking as if trying to hold on to lost time. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice choked up. "For everything. I was wrong. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I beg you to give me a chance to make it right." Penelope didn't answer right away. She stood there, torn between mixed emotions, anger, lingering love, and pity at seeing her father in such a state. While Edward and Penelope are trying to reconcile, Patricia appears, this time with her usual complacent expression on her face. "Oh, that's so touching," Patricia smiled coldly. "But don't forget, Edward, you don't have much time left. We need to finish signing the will." Penelope turned to Patricia, her eyes shining with suspicion. "Signing a will? What are you talking about?" Edward, mustering all his strength, said in a voice full of anger, "Patricia planned to usurp all of Dad's assets. Dad didn't realize it until it was too late." Patricia smirked, but her smile quickly faded as Penelope stood up, facing her. "You took advantage of my father when he was at his weakest, just to satisfy your greed?" At this time, Brooke entered the room with Jason, Edward's close lawyer. In Jason's hand is a thick file of documents, full of evidence of Patricia's wrongdoings, shady bank transfers, emails containing financial manipulation, and even forged signatures. "Patricia," Jason said, his voice serious, "what you did was enough to put you in jail. This is proof that you took advantage of Edward's health to take advantage of his assets." Patricia turned pale, but she still tried to stay calm. "You can't prove anything," she said, her voice testy. Penelope stepped forward, eyes blazing. "You not only hurt my father, but you also hurt this whole family. I will not let you continue to destroy any more." Patricia tried to justify, but the truth was obvious. Edward, although weak, also mustered up the strength to sign the papers blocking Patricia from his property. Penelope, standing next to her father, like a warrior ready to protect him from all dangers. Patricia, in the end, had no choice but to leave humiliated. "You'll regret it," she said before leaving the room. But Penelope's eyes did not waver, as if wanting to confirm that they had won this war. When everything calmed down, Edward looked at Penelope, tears filling his blurry eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "I don't think I deserve this forgiveness." Penelope held his hand, her hand shaking. "I was wrong, but the important thing is that I'm trying to make it right. That means something to me." Brooke, standing nearby, smiled gently. "Sometimes, the greatest redemption is not changing the past, but building a better future." Edward nodded, as if those words had gently taken the weight off his shoulders. Penelope, with the support of Brooke and Jason, sets out to transform Edward's company into a place that not only focuses on profits but also creates value for the community. The Edward Scott Community Center was founded, becoming a symbol of redemption and compassion. During the opening of the center, Penelope stood before the crowd, tears glistening in the light of the new morning. "My father's legacy is not just high-rise buildings or big companies," she said. "It's about what we do to help each other, to change the lives of those around us." That day, Edward passed away peacefully, a satisfied smile on his face. He not only found his daughter, but left behind a true legacy, a legacy of love, forgiveness, and kindness. Penelope stood on the roof of the center, looking out at the sparkling city lights. She whispered, as if addressing her father, "Dad, I will continue what you started. And I will do it with all the love you have given me. How do you feel about this story? Do you think forgiveness really has the power to change things? Please leave your opinion in the comments section. If you feel this story touches your heart, please like and share to spread the message of love and forgiveness. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next emotional and meaningful stories. Comment your thoughts below. Do you believe that all mistakes can be forgiven? We look forward to hearing from you.